I met Claire on a Tuesday, the kind of day that meant nothing and everything. Gray, forgettable. One of those late autumn afternoons where the wind smells like cold metal and the world feels slightly out of sync. I was sipping burned office coffee, standing on the patio of my firm's break area, trying not to think about the divorce papers I'd shoved into my bottom drawer. And then she walked by. She didn't notice me at first. She was focused on her phone, mouthing silent words like she was rehearsing a conversation. Brown leather jacket, pencil skirt, sunglasses too expensive for a mid-tier accounting firm, and heels that didn't belong in a building full of spreadsheets. When she finally looked up, she saw me and smiled. Not polite, not awkward. She smiled like she knew me, like we'd shared something once. It threw me off so badly I forgot I was holding my coffee until it spilled onto my shoe. That's how it started. Her name was Claire Alden. My name's Nathan. Nathan Doran. I'm 38, co-founder of a boutique finance consultancy in Chicago. I'm not rich, but I do okay. I'm not handsome in a movie star way, but I clean up well. Or at least I used to, before the bags under my eyes started staying permanent that we officially met 2 days later in the elevator. She hit the button for the 14th floor. My firm was on 16. She looked over and said, "You're the guy who spilled coffee on himself, right?" I laughed, and she held out her hand. "Claire." "Nathan." She tilted her head. "That sounds like a trustworthy name." I told her I was in finance. She said she was a legal consultant for the tech startup on 14. We made small talk for 20 floors, but there was a hum underneath it all. Electricity neither of us addressed. By the next week, we were having drinks after work. Claire was sharp, stunning, but not in a desperate way. She was composed, unshakable. She always seemed one step ahead of whatever conversation we were having, like she was mentally playing chess while the rest of us were playing checkers. She knew things about people. Not gossip, details. Who was sleeping with whom? Which companies were laundering through crypto? Which divorce attorney to hire if you wanted to keep the beach house and the kids? "I pay attention," she said once. "It's amazing what people give away for free." I should have taken that as a warning. Instead, I took her to be ED. Wasn't supposed to become anything serious. She knew I was separated. She said she didn't believe in relationships anyway. Emotional ownership is outdated, she told me once over sushi. We're not built for monogamy. We're built for strategy. It should have ended there, but it didn't, because Claire knew how to become whatever someone needed. With me, she was calm, grounding, a tether in a storm. With others, she was chaos in high heels. I watched her manipulate entire conversations. At dinner parties with nothing more than a raised eyebrow, that I was fascinated. Addicted, really, and soon, we were inseparable. One night, maybe 2 months into it, she asked, "Do you ever lie to people just to see if you can?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean," she said, tracing her finger along the rim of her wine glass. "Do you ever say something that isn't true, not because you need to, but because you want to see if they'll believe you?" I said no. She smiled. "I do it all the time." That was the first crack in the mirror. Then came the first coincidence. We were walking past a restaurant near Millennium Park when she stopped abruptly. Inside, sitting near the window, was my estranged wife, Emily. Claire stared at her, then at me. "That's her." I didn't answer. Claire turned and kissed me hard, right there on the street, in plain view. "She looked," she said. "She saw us." My heart was pounding. "You planned this." She raised an eyebrow. "Did I?" I didn't speak for the rest of the walk. Things started moving quickly after that. Claire suggested we move in together. "Just for convenience," she said. "I hate commuting." Against my better judgment, I agreed. She started reorganizing things. My closet, my fridge, my calendar. She left post-it notes around the apartment with cryptic reminders. "Deny everything. Check third drawer. Smile like you mean it." I asked about them once. She shrugged. "Just mental tricks. Helps me stay sharp." But one note, one I found hidden behind my desk, said something that chilled me. "Don't fall for him." That wasn't the plan. I confronted her. She laughed, said it was an old joke from a writing workshop. "Why were you hiding it?" She shrugged. "Maybe I wanted you to find it." That night, I barely slept. At BY morning, she was gone. No note, no text. Her things were still there. Clothes, laptop, wallet, everything except Claire. She didn't come back for 3 days, and when she did, she said, I needed to know how you'd react. That was when I realized Claire wasn't a girlfriend. Claire was a test, but I didn't know what for. Yet, Claire came back like nothing had happened. She walked through the door at 6:12 a.m., barefoot, coat folded neatly over her arm, no makeup, eyes bloodshot like she hadn't slept. She headed straight for the shower without a word. I sat on the couch in silence, heart hammering. I hadn't seen or heard from her in 3 days. And when she stepped out of the bathroom 20 minutes later in one of my old t-shirts, she said, "Only, do you want eggs?" That was Claire. She could disappear and reappear in your life like she had a key to your blood pressure that I didn't ask where she'd gone. I wanted to. I needed to. But something stopped me. Maybe it was fear. Maybe it was pride. Or maybe it was because part of me already knew I wouldn't believe whatever she said. She cracked 6 eggs into a bowl and asked, "You ever wish you could forget someone existed?" "Sometimes." She nodded, whisking faster than necessary. "Good," she said. "That means you've met someone real." Later that day, I checked her laptop while she was out grocery shopping. I know. But I had to know who she really was. She never let me near the device. Password protected. Sleek black skin, like it was new. Always locked and always shut. But that morning, she left it open. Careless or deliberate, I didn't know. Maybe she wanted me to look. But I did. There wasn't much at first, a few Word docs titled things like Baker Project and Referral List. Harmless. But then I found a folder labeled Arrangement. Inside, subfolders, each with a man's name. Names like Michael Strahanlium Vosgabriel. Oddly, a woman, Nathan Doran. Me. Each folder had files. Photos, notes, transcripts of conversations, financial documents, emails. Some were screenshots. Others were PDF. Scans.my hands went cold. I clicked on mine first. There was a photo of me, sleeping. Notes in bullet form. Estranged wife. Emily Doran. Lawyer, resourceful, keep eyes on her. Vulnerable. Leans toward trust. Grooming stage successful. Check bank for late 2020 wire. Crossref. Crossref. Grooming. What the hell? Was this? I clicked Gabrielle L. That folder was worse. There were audio recordings. A woman sobbing. A man's voice screaming about betrayal. A divorce settlement PDF. Police report screenshots. Suddenly I realized Claire had done this before. To other people. She wasn't dating me. She was working me. But why? She came home while I was still staring at the files that I didn't hear her enter. I was frozen, sick to my stomach. When I finally looked up, she was standing in the hallway. One grocery bag in her hand. The other still by the door. She stared at the screen, then at me, and said, "Well, that didn't take long." "What is this?" I asked, voice barely above a whisper. She closed the laptop gently. Not hurried, not ashamed, almost loving. "It's insurance." "For what?" "In case you turned out like the others." "What others?" She smiled. "You've only seen your file, haven't you?" I didn't answer. Claire stepped into the kitchen, began unloading fruit like it was any other morning. Bananas, apples, a bag of pomegranate seeds. "Nathan," she said calmly, "have you ever heard the phrase selective empathy?" I didn't respond. "It's a condition," she continued, placing fruit into a wooden bowl. "Some people feel nothing. Sociopaths. Others feel everything. Empaths. But selective empathy means you choose who you care about, one person at a time. Like spotlighting." She turned to me. "I spotlight you, Nathan. Right now? That should scare you more than it comforts you." I didn't sleep that night. I laid awake beside her in bed, watching the glow of her phone reflect on the ceiling. She scrolled quietly. No words. Her breathing steady. Her skin warm against mine. And in that moment, I realized I was in love with someone I couldn't trust. Worse, I didn't want to leave. The next day at work, things got worse. I arrived to find my access badge wasn't working. Took the freight elevator up. When I reached my floor, the entire staff was gathered in the common area. Low voices. Awkward stares. Something had happened. Tom, our IT director, pulled me aside. "HR wants to see you." "Why?" He hesitated. "There." Not saying. I walked into the office and found my partner, Jeff, and the HR manager sitting at the table. A printout of an email lay between them. The subject line: sexual misconduct concern. It was sent from my email address. I read the body. It referenced one of our interns. Claimed she'd enticed me, and that I'd given her job perks, in exchange for private meetings. It was complete fiction, I said. This isn't real. I didn't write this. Jeff looked pale. We've contacted legal. That night, I confronted Claire. She didn't deny it. Why? I asked. She opened a bottle of wine. Because you needed a pressure test. It what? She poured one glass, then another. I needed to know how much you could handle before folding. If you'd still believe I'm worth it after the storm. You could have ruined me. She shrugged. I haven't. Not yet. I wanted to scream. I wanted to hit something. But then she reached out and touched my face. Back at the bar, I snapped 2 photos of Lauren and Emily at the booth. Not enough to catch audio, but enough to see Emily lean in and cover Lauren's hand with hers. That it looked caring, not romantic, like a mentor trying to protect a mentee, like someone who was on the edge of saying something dangerous, something true, but hadn't yet found the courage. That I went home and uploaded the photos. The next day, a message arrived on the untraceable phone. New instruction, apply pressure, test, and turned out if she breaks, she's a leak. That if she holds, the target is compromised. They were asking me to scare a 22-year-old girl to test if she'd cave. Claire, watch me read the message. She said nothing, but her eyes watched for my reaction like she was a scientist evaluating a lab rat. You said this wasn't a cult, I said quietly. It's not, she replied. Then why does it feel like 1? Claire leaned forward. Because this is the first time in your life that someone gave you power and didn't ask you to apologize for it. I met Lauren outside her office. Not an ambush. Not a threat. I just told her I used to know Emily, that I was trying to understand something about an old case, and that I thought someone was watching them. She froze. Her fingers gripped her handbag. That I said, you're in danger. Her voice cracked. I know. That's when she broke. Tears at the corner of her eyes, barely contained. She's trying to blow the whistle, Lauren whispered. On the Maracade case. The suicides. Emily. Blowing the whistle, my chest caved in with the weight of it. I had assumed she'd sold her soul, that she'd buried bodies for money. But what if Claire had lied? What if she only showed me the first half of the truth? What do you mean? Lauren glanced over her shoulder. She made a deal to stay quiet, yeah? But she's been collecting data. Evidence. The whole thing was rigged. The deaths, they knew. She's been building a case behind everyone's back. I returned home in a daze. Claire was in the kitchen again, cooking, chopping mushrooms like nothing was happening. She's trying to take them down, I said. Claire didn't look up. She's not corrupt. She's undercover. She's got a file. Lauren told me. Still, no reply. You lied to me. Finally, Claire turned, knife still in hand. No, she said slowly. I gave you a version of the truth. Why? Because I wanted to see if you'd look deeper. I stared at her. You used me. Claire's voice lowered. No, Nathan. I trained you. She set the knife down gently, wiped her hands, walked up to me, close. You're not here to destroy Emily, she said. You're here to find out what she's really capable of, just like we did with you. You think I'm going to keep doing this after I know the truth? You already are. She was right. I had files, surveillance, black phones, burner laptops. I was in the game. Like it or not. Why her? I asked. Why Emily? Claire's expression darkened, just for a second. It was the first time I'd seen her face lose that icy composure. Because, she said, 3 years ago, she buried my brother. Because, Claire said, stepping back from me slowly. 3 years ago, she buried my brother. The words hit like a brick. I felt the air change in the room. Denser, charged up. Claire's face had cracked open, just for a second. Not vulnerability, not grief, something sharper, like vengeance hiding behind well-trained composure. I blinked. Your brother? She nodded once. Slowly. Ethan Graves. He was one of the plaintiffs in the Maracade suit. He took the drug for anxiety after his deployment. 2 months later, he put a gun in his mouth and pulled the trigger. I swallowed. I'm sorry. I didn't know. Of course not. Emily made sure no one would. She turned away from me, picked up her wine glass, and downed what was left. When she faced me again, her eyes were dry, controlled. Your wife was part of the legal team that settled that suit. She convinced Ethan to accept the money instead of taking it public. Said it was cleaner and safer for everyone. She even gave a statement about protecting the firm's reputation. I shook my head. But now she's trying to expose it. Claire smiled coldly. A little late for that. I left the apartment that night that I couldn't stay there. Not with Claire watching me like I was her project. Not with that look in her eyes that said she still wanted something from me. That I walked the city for hours. Past the law firm. Past our old apartment building. Past the lakefront where Emily and I used to sit and talk about having kids we never had. The truth twisted and doubled back on itself until I couldn't tell which version I believed anymore. Was Emily complicit? Was she trying to make it right? Was Claire lying? Or just selective with her truths? Back in the shadows of an alley off Lake Street, I pulled out the untraceable phone and typed a single message that I want a meeting with whoever runs this. Face to face. I hit send. No reply. 3 hours later, the phone vibrated. No text. Just a new location pinned to a map. Industrial Park 9. Door 47. Midnight. That was in 45 minutes. Door 47 was unmarked. Unwelcoming. The entire industrial block looked deserted except for one overhead light, flickering faintly above the threshold that I knocked once. The door opened. The man inside was tall, gray-haired, clean-shaven. No visible emotion. He wore a navy suit with no tie, and he held a tablet he never looked away from. "You requested a meeting," he said. "You have 5 minutes." "I want to know what this really is," I said. He said nothing. "I want to know if Claire's using me. If this is revenge. If Emily's being framed, or if she's trying to blow the whistle." He looked up now. His eyes were pale blue, almost white in the low light. "You were never told to make moral judgments," he said. "You were told to gather, report, react." "Yeah, well," I snapped. "Turns out I still have a conscience." He smiled faintly, like it amused him. "Mr. Doran, we don't care if you like Emily, hate her, or want to save her. What matters is what she does next." He handed me a USB stick. "Plug that in when you're ready. It will record her activity in real time. Conversations, drives, emails." I stared at the stick in my hand. It felt heavier than it should. "What happens if she's clean?" I asked. "Then we pivot." "To who?" The man blinked slowly. "To you." Back in my car, I stared at the USB. It was labeled simply Gateway. If I installed it, I crossed a line I couldn't uncross. This wasn't watching from the outside. This was digital trespassing. This was invasion. But if I didn't, then I'd never know. Not what Emily was really planning. Not what Claire's role truly was. Not who the hell was running this puppet show. From behind that flickering door, I drove straight to Emily's condo, parked outside. Waited until I saw the lights go off in the front room. Then I used the emergency key she kept under the second-floor planter. I entered slowly. No noise. No alarms. Inside, the place smelled like jasmine and lavender. Same scent she used to wear when we first moved in together. It hurt. Somehow. I moved to her office, booted up the laptop, inserted Gateway. It auto-launched. Silent interface. No sign it was doing anything. But I knew it was. I took nothing. I touched nothing else. Then I left. 2 days passed. No calls. No meetings. Then Claire sent a message to the burner. Meeting confirmed. Thursday, 8 p.m. You'll want to see what's in the transcript. The warehouse had been converted into a staging area. Walls covered in soundproof fabric. A monitor sat in the center of the space, hooked up to a secure server. Claire waited next to it, arms crossed, wearing all black. Her expression unreadable. "What's this?" I asked. "Emily's Thursday night meeting," she said. She tapped the spacebar. Audio played to Emily's voice. "I've got the internal memos. Dated before the first suicide. They knew it triggered psychotic spirals in patients with PTSD. Male voice. You sure they can't trace the files to your account?" "Emily, I'm clean. I used an external node in Singapore. All VPNs. But we need a whistleblower route. Something anonymous and protected. Otherwise, they'll destroy me." The audio crackled slightly. Then another voice, female, cut in. "Unknown. And what about Nathan?" A pause. "Emily, he's out. I don't want him anywhere near this. If he finds out what I've done, it'll break him." Another pause. Then, softly, "I still love him." Claire stopped the recording. We stood in silence. My throat burned. My chest felt like it was trying to collapse in on itself. "She's not your enemy," I said finally. Claire said nothing. "She's trying to expose the same people you are." Claire looked at me, her eyes cold. "You think she's brave. But the truth is, she got involved after she took the money. After people died. After my brother put a bullet through his head. She's trying to make it right. And so are we." Claire snapped. But don't confuse redemption with justice. One doesn't erase the other. That night, I dreamed of fire, buildings burning, emails flashing across screens, Claire screaming, Emily drowning in paperwork, trying to breathe beneath stacks of case files and silence clauses that I woke up drenched in sweat, unsure if I was the hero, the villain, or just a piece of someone else's plan. The next morning, the world was quieter. Or maybe it was just me that I moved through the city like a shadow, not just watching anymore, but haunted by everything I knew. I had evidence. I had sides. I even had motives, now, but something felt off. That Claire's crusade didn't line up anymore. Emily's secret whistleblower campaign wasn't the whole story. Something was still missing. The whole picture was incomplete, like I'd been given two corners of a puzzle and told to guess the middle. I was done guessing. I did what I should have done weeks ago. I paid a visit to Lauren and whispered, "Don't quit now. You're almost through the initiation." The word struck me like a brick to the chest. Initiation? What the hell are you talking about? She pulled a folded piece of paper from her coat pocket, slid it across the table. Inside was a business card, cream background, gold lettering. No name, just a symbol, a black chess knight, and a number. "I wasn't sent to destroy you, Nathan," she said softly. "I was sent to recruit you." The business card sat between us on the kitchen table like a loaded weapon. A black knight chess piece. No name, no company, just a phone number and a feeling that something had already shifted in the fabric of my life, and there would be no way back. "I was sent to recruit you," Claire said again, sipping her wine that I didn't pick. "Up the card." "Not yet." My hands were shaking, and I didn't want her to see. "Recruit me for what?" I asked. She gave me that signature half smile, the one that told you she already knew what you were going to say, and more importantly, what you were afraid to say. "A private network," she said. "Invitation only. We work in layers. Finance, influence, corporate intelligence, political leverage. You might call it strategic disruption." I laughed bitterly. "That sounds like conspiracy theory nonsense." "You think the world runs on rules?" she asked. "It runs on secrets and the people who control them." She stood up, walked to the fridge, pulled out the pomegranate seeds. "You passed your trial." "Barely. Most men in your position break down or run. You didn't. That's rare." I stared at her. "What if I say no?" She popped a seed into her mouth and said, "Then you go back to your mediocre job, your unfinished divorce, and your shrinking reputation." "And if I say yes?" She leaned over, her face inches from mine. "Then you find out who I really work for." That night, I couldn't sleep. The card sat on my nightstand, practically humming with implications that I thought about everything that had led to this moment. Claire's sudden appearance in my life, her mind games, the planted scandal at work, her file system, the surveillance, the initiation that I'd seen enough in the last week to make one thing very clear. Claire was dangerous. But the terrifying truth? She was also telling the truth. About the network. About being recruited. About the layers that I wasn't being destroyed. I was being drafted, and a small part of me. The broken part, the angry part, the part that watched my marriage crumble and my career rot from the inside out. Wanted to say yes, not because I believed her, but because I wanted to believe someone. Still had a plan for me. I called the number the next morning. IT rang twice. Then a voice answered. "Nathan Doran. Male. Calm. Precise." "Yes," I said. Claire said to call. Silence. Then, "She vouched for you." "Okay. What is this?" "You'll find out soon. Check your email in 12 minutes. Be ready. No calls. No replies. Follow directions exactly." Click. The line went dead. 12 minutes later, an email arrived. No subject line. No signature. Just an address and a time. 4710 South Wallace Avenue. 7:45 p.m. Dress code. Neutral. No ties. No metal. There was an attachment. A single-page NDA, legalese I'd seen before, but darker, colder. The language was filled with penalties. That didn't make sense. Things like psychological breach, private memory vault, public mask integrity. I had no idea what I was agreeing to, but I signed it anyway. Claire said nothing all day. She watched me, studied me like I was some slow chess move unfolding. That night, I dressed as instructed, black jeans, gray sweater, nothing sharp, nothing reflective. "Will you be there?" I asked. "No, why not?" She leaned against the doorframe and said, "Because this is where you prove you can stand alone." 4710S. Wallace looked like an abandoned warehouse on the edge of the city's old meatpacking district. Rusted signage, boarded windows, no visible cameras, which meant there were definitely cameras. I knocked once, as instructed. The door opened 5 seconds later. No words. A man in a wool coat with a shaved head ushered me inside and frisked me. No weapons. No phone. The interior surprised me. Clean. Quiet. Sterile. Almost like a museum. White walls. Dark flooring. A hallway with 7 unmarked doors, and a single word painted in stark black letters above. Orientation. There were 6 of us in the room. 3 men. 2 women. One who didn't speak or move, just stared ahead like he was on something heavy. We sat in a semicircle of white chairs facing a screen. On it, a logo, the same chess knight from the card. No title, no menu. Just the night. A voice came through hidden speakers. "This is not a cult. This is not espionage. This is control." A pause. "You've been chosen because you represent vulnerability, capability, and discretion. That combination is rare." The screen changed. A series of headlines appeared: corporate leaks, divorces, resignations, lawsuits, all tied to anonymous sources or unexplained events. "We don't just observe power structures," the voice said. "We alter them." My mouth went dry. Another voice took over, female this time. Cold and clipped. "There are rules. You will learn them in time. But first, we need your silence." The screen went black. Then a new message appeared, glowing. White on black. Stage 1. Targets on Paris. The first voice returned. "You will be given a name. That name is your project, your purpose, your pressure point." I waited. My stomach churned. Then a slip of paper was handed to each of us by the silent man from earlier. Mine read, "Emily Dormy, wife." I staggered back to the apartment, adrenaline burned off and replaced with confusion, anger, and a rising sense of dread. Emily. What the hell did she have to do with this? Claire was waiting when I got home, legs tucked under her on the couch. Laptop closed. She didn't ask what happened. Didn't need to. "They gave you someone, didn't they?" she said, softly. I nodded. "Who?" I hesitated, but Claire already knew. I could see it in her eyes. "You're not allowed to say," she whispered, like it turned her on. I sat down across from her, my mouth dry. "What am I supposed to do?" Claire leaned forward, her voice low, intimate. "You're going to watch her. Learn her tells. Find her weak spot. And when they say go," she smiled, "you'll crack her open like an egg." "But she's my wife." "Was," Claire said. "That part of your life is over." I shook my head. "She didn't do anything. She's just a lawyer." Claire's voice dropped to a whisper. "You think they would assign her to you without a reason?" She slid my laptop toward me. Opened a folder. Inside, more documents that Emily's legal firm had defended a pharmaceutical company in a wrongful death lawsuit 2 years ago. Settled out of court. The settlement involved sealing documents about a drug that had caused a string of suicides. 10 people dead, Claire said. "Your wife made it go away." I stared at the screen. I didn't want to believe it, but I couldn't look away. Claire said, "You wanted a new life. This is the price." I sat in the dark, staring at the glowing screen while the past began to rot under the weight of revelation. Emily, my wife, my supposed moral compass, had helped bury a case tied to 10 dead people. Claire said it like it was a fact. She presented the files, the names, the court transcripts, all blacked out and redacted. But one thing stood out. The firm she worked for, Langston Price LLP, had indeed been the legal wall between the grieving families and any form of justice, and Emily had signed off on it. Her name, clear as day on the settlement agreement. Maybe she didn't know the full extent, I muttered, more to myself than to Claire. Claire tilted her head. "You're still trying to save her. That's sweet." "I'm trying to understand," I snapped. "No," she said, rising from the couch. "You're trying to pretend. That's different." That night, I couldn't stop thinking about the Emily I used to know that we met in college, a politics class on regulatory law. She outdebated the professor twice and made me fall in love with her brain before I even noticed the curve of her spine or the way her hands trembled when she spoke in public. She was fiery, uncompromising. She said things like, "Everyone lies, but the truth always has paperwork." So how the hell had she become a fixer? I pulled out the folder Claire had given me and flipped to the second page. There, in careful print, was an address. Emily's office, her firm, her hours, and a short list of names underneath labeled watch points. Ruth Simmons, paralegal, loyal; Jonathan Vale, senior partner, critical; Lauren T., new intern, possible leak. They'd already mapped out her circle. Already assessed the people who might unravel her carefully stitched facade. The organization, whatever it was, had been watching long before me. 3 days later, I began surveillance. That I know how that sounds. But when someone gives you a reason to doubt everything you believed about the one person who once shared your name, trust starts to look like weakness. I followed her from her parking garage to the office. Waited hours. Then again, after work, as she met someone in a downtown. Bar.it wasn't a man. It was the intern, Lauren T. They weren't having drinks. They were whispering. Hushed. Urgent. Emily looked over her shoulder 3 times in 20 minutes. Lauren looked scared. That night, I opened the apartment safe Claire installed in the back of the closet. It contained an untraceable phone, a thumb drive labeled keys, and a printed set of instructions. Operative Note 1 record, all target meetings. Prioritize unknown parties. Cross-reference body language, tone shifts, and dates/times with legal actions or case events. Submit via upload protocol in 5 days. Failure to comply equals termination of agreement. Termination of the agreement. What the hell had I signed up for? She lived in a studio apartment above a Korean barbecue joint and answered the door in an oversized hoodie and no makeup. Her eyes had the unmistakable puffiness of someone who hadn't slept much. You shouldn't be here, she said, peeking out the hallway. I need answers, I replied. And you owe me for not turning you in. That got her attention. She stepped aside. Lauren's apartment was filled with books. Law textbooks, forensic accounting manuals, and a whiteboard covered in circles and arrows. A spiderweb of names, dates, and red lines connected points labeled. Langston Price, LL Pimaricade Corp. DOJ. Antitrust Division Whistleblower Trust, a 38-inch Project Horizon. What the hell is this? I asked. She glanced at it and rubbed her temple. Everything Emily's been working on. And everything she hasn't told you. Like what? Lauren sighed and sat on the armrest of her couch. Like the fact that this isn't just about Maricade, she said. That case was the bait. The firm took a huge settlement to make it go away, and it worked. But what Emily found afterward, she tapped the board with a marker, Project Horizon. It's buried under shell core and fake consulting branches. But it's real. Maricade isn't just covering up bad drug trials. They're developing predictive compliance algorithms, tools that tell corporations how to break the law just enough to stay profitable without triggering enforcement. I blinked. Wait, like corporate crime optimization? Lauren nodded. Exactly. And Emily has proof? Not yet. But she's close. The bottom dropped out of my stomach. Because, suddenly, I understood why I had been recruited. Why Claire hadn't just sent a hit squad or exposed Emily herself. They didn't just want to watch her. They wanted her work, and then they wanted her gone. I stood, pacing the room. You said she's going to leak this? She's planning to dump the whole thing, Lawrence said. Emails, memos, internal reports. And not to the press, to a federal oversight committee with real teeth. She's meeting with them in less than a week. I froze. That was it. The timeline. The pressure. That's why Claire's messages had turned urgent. That's why the surveillance was increasing. That's why I was being told to push Emily further. They wanted her to hand it over, and then they'd erase her. I turned to Lauren. Does she know she's being watched? Lauren hesitated. She suspects. But, not you. She still thinks you're out. When I got back to my car, I sat there for a long time. I didn't turn the key. I didn't reach for the burner phone. I just stared at my own reflection in the rearview mirror, wondering how much of the man I used to be was still inside the shell. They'd molded, and then the phone buzzed. New instruction. Subject is to be extracted post-transfer. Secure the data. Clean the slate. No ambiguity. No code words. Just clean the slate. They were telling me, in plain terms, to be the bait. Let Emily complete her whistleblower leak. Then facilitate her removal. That's what final test meant. I didn't sleep that night. That I didn't go back to Claire. I pulled out the second USB from the safe. The one labeled keys. I never knew what was on it. I assumed it was a second gateway into Emily's files, but I was wrong. Inside was a list. not just of surveillance targets, but of operatives, recruits, like me. Tier I, MPLN Gina M, Boston Caleb R, Atlanta Jackson V, Dallas Tier 2, UN Stingley Nathan D, Chicago Fiona K, NY Sealy Chun, SF, deceased, and below it, Tier 3, UN Claire Graves. I froze. Claire was Tier 3. The rarest classification. A warning? A threat? A ghost in the system? Beneath that, in red, Claire Graves is authorized outside protocol. Extreme discretion advised. Level 6 override permitted. I had no idea what Level 6 meant, but I knew what the warning meant. Claire wasn't a handler. She was a rogue element. I made a choice that I called Emily. She answered on the third ring. Her voice was groggy, defensive. Nathan? I exhaled. Don't hang up. Why are you calling me now? Because someone is going to try to kill you. Silence. Nathan? What? I don't have time to explain everything. You're being watched. Your intern is under pressure. And Claire isn't who she says she is. She has her own agenda. You've spoken to Claire? More silence. Then, you've been working with them. I heard the heartbreak in her voice. Not anymore, I said. She didn't reply. Emily, you're blowing the whistle next week. You're walking into a trap. Once you turn over the data, they're going to erase you. How do you know that? Because I've seen the directive. There was a beat of air, a sharp inhale. You need to disappear, I said. Tonight. Go dark. Burn your devices. Use the plan you used to make fun of me for having. Go. Off-grid. I'll find you when it's safe. I don't know if I can trust you. I don't expect you to. But I'm doing this because I still love you. Because even after everything, I never stopped. I hung up before she could reply. 18 midnight. I met Claire one last time. Same warehouse. Same quiet room. You've seen the directive? She asked. I nodded. And I'll do it, I said. But on one condition. She raised an eyebrow. You tell me why you're Tier 3. Her eyes narrowed. You've been digging. I want to know who you are. What you really want. This isn't about your brother anymore. You're too calculated. Too surgical. You want more than justice. Claire stared at me for a long time. Then, finally, she sat down. My brother's death was the beginning, not the reason. I learned what power does to people, to systems. I watched a government agency applaud a settlement because it made the quarterly report look good. She leaned forward. So I built something better. Something not tied to morals or politics. Something effective. You mean this organization? She smiled. I mean a tool. One that finds people like you. Like Emily. Like me. And asks one question. Will you make the world cleaner? Or just cleaner looking? I didn't answer, because I didn't know yet. But I knew this. Emily was gone by the time Claire realized it. She would have already crossed 3 state lines, and I had a head start. I hit the highway before sunrise, heading west through back roads and forgotten towns. Claire wouldn't waste time sending people after me. She had them ready, probably before our meeting ended. But I knew the escape routes. I'd rehearsed this scenario a dozen times before I ever thought I'd need it. Burner phone off. Car swapped at a truck stop just past Rockford. Fake plates. No digital trail. Emily had vanished. I'd made sure of it. But disappearing wasn't the same as surviving. Not with what she knew. And not with Project Horizon already breathing down our necks. The safe house wasn't glamorous. The decommissioned ranger station buried in an Illinois forest preserve, outfitted years ago during a paranoid phase of mine when I still thought I'd be a cybersecurity expert for the government. No Wi-Fi. No cell signal. Just a generator, a couple of hardline connections, and enough food for 2 weeks. Emily arrived just after midnight. I watched from the trees, just to be sure she hadn't been followed. When she stepped out of the beat-up Honda she'd borrowed, her hair was tucked under a cap and her face was bare. No makeup. No expression. Just steel. She saw me immediately. You did this? She asked, voice low but clear. I nodded. For a long time, we said nothing. Then she walked past me into the house like it was nothing at all. Inside, she dropped a duffel bag on the table. Then she pulled out a hard drive. Thick. Protected. Air-gapped. This is it, she said. Everything I have on Horizon. I sat down across from her. We need to go through it piece by piece. Before we leak anything. She raised an eyebrow. You're not the one leaking it. No, I said. But I might be the only one. Who knows how to keep you alive long enough to do it? She nodded. We gotta work. The files were devastating. Emails between Maricade executives and corporate compliance engineers from no fewer than 5 multinational firms. Instructions on how to test the limits of regulatory thresholds, just under the line of felony charges. Just enough to cause irreversible harm without legal accountability. Point 1 memo stood out. Horizon has predicted a 64% chance of no DOJ follow-up if overdoses remain under 600 annually. Proceed with Phase 3 distribution and trigger DC lobbying. Spend if press escalates. Another one. Worse. Public sentiment indicates attention span threshold for opioid cases is 3.7 days. Initiate micro-scandal campaign in week 2 to bury headlines. Horizon will monitor sentiment drift in real time. I stared at it, jaw tight. This isn't prediction, I muttered. This is control. Emily leaned back, rubbing her temples. They're not forecasting behavior. They're steering it, using PR, outrage fatigue, and misinformation as tools. They're writing the rules. She nodded grimly. And now they want to erase the only person who still understands the full scope. For the next 2 days, we stayed off-grid. We re-encrypted the drive, partitioned and duplicated segments, buried copies in 3 separate locations, each with deadman triggers. If either of us vanished for more than 48 hours, the data would go public via whistleblower networks, activist forums, and even Reddit leaks. That IT wasn't perfect, but it was better than waiting to die quietly. On the 3rd night, the radio scanner picked something up, encrypted pings bouncing off nearby cell towers. Local, fast, coordinated. They found us, Emily whispered. We grabbed our go bags. Getting out was messier than I'd hoped. Point 2 black SUVs tore through the woods behind us, and I had to disable one by jamming their RF. The second hit a spike strip I'd buried for this exact scenario. Still, one man got out, dark gray tactical gear, civilian face, Claire's color palette. He saw me and hesitated just long enough for Emily to fire a warning shot near his feet. He didn't chase us. He just lifted a phone, pressed a single button, and said into it, "Tag confirmed. Primary in flight." We were in a live operation. We made it to Milwaukee by morning. Found a motel with cash-only rooms and a broken camera system. I hacked into a nearby store's Wi-Fi from a parking lot and used it to mask our signal. From there, Emily made the call. She used a chain of virtual numbers and voice modulation. No names, no identifiers. The man who answered was Kurt. "You're 3 days early," he said. "I'm compromised," she replied. "Data's real. So is the threat. I want full protection, not just for me, but the source." There was a pause. Then, secure drop. 24 hours. Location will be sent. He hung up. Later that night, I asked her something I hadn't dared to say aloud yet. "Why now?" I asked. "You could have burned all this before. Walked away. Why come back for it?" Emily looked out the window, into the flickering neon of a liquor store sign across the street. "Because I knew you'd find it eventually," she said. "And I didn't want you to face it alone." I didn't have a response. We didn't sleep that night. The next morning, something changed, not in the world. In us. The silence between us was no longer cold. It was heavy, weighted with decisions unmade. We knew what came next. The drop, the leak, the blowback. But we also knew Claire wouldn't stop. Her network was built on contingency and distrust. If she failed to extract Emily, she'd shift tactics, but she'd come for me. We needed leverage. So I went back to the beginning, back to the USB-labeled keys. And in one encrypted folder I hadn't opened yet, I found a name. Dr. Felix Laird, Behavioral Algorithms Division, Horizon Core Team. DEFCON 2 access. Beneath that, a note. Fail-safe trigger. Laird knows the original code base. If he defects, Horizon loses adaptive capacity. In plain terms, Laird was the architect, and if we got him, we could shut Horizon down, not just expose it, but break it. We just had to find him first. Claire beat us to it. That night, I received a private message on the untraceable laptop. "You're in deeper than you realize. Laird is already in play. You're not the only one who found him. Be at these coordinates in 36 hours if you want him alive. This is your only chance." Attached was a GPS marker, Northern Michigan. Remote. Isolated. It wasn't a trap. If Claire wanted us dead, we'd be gone already. It was something else. The final offer? A final test? Or maybe a final choice. We drove through the night, headlights cutting through the dark wilderness of northern Michigan. The coordinates Claire sent led us deep into the Manistee National Forest, a place so remote, even the deer seemed to eye us like we didn't belong. Our GPS died miles before the turnoff. After that, it was compass navigation and pure paranoia. Emily sat beside me, tense but unreadable. She hadn't spoken much since we'd decided to chase down Laird. There wasn't anything left to say that we either found the architect and ended Horizon at its source, or we burned with it. The final stretch was a dirt road so overgrown it looked like it hadn't been driven in decades. But at the end of it, we found something impossible, a small lakeside lodge, modern, sleek, and completely out of place. Power generators hummed low outside. Satellite dishes pointed skyward, and in front of the entrance stood Claire. She wore black slacks, boots, and a matte gray coat that somehow didn't attract a single leaf or speck of dust. When we stepped out of the car, she raised a single hand, unarmed. Peaceful, but still dangerous. "Thank you for coming," she said, as if we'd been invited to brunch. Emily didn't even flinch. "Where is he?" Claire nodded toward the door. "Inside. Alive. Cooperative. And this isn't a trap?" I asked. "No," she said. "It's an opportunity." The inside of the lodge was all hardwood and glass, like a luxury ski rental. But beneath the surface, it was wired tight. Cameras, motion sensors, reinforced walls. A safe house. But not for us. Claire led us down a hallway to a secure room, where a man sat at a table, sipping tea like he wasn't the most dangerous civilian technologist in North America. He was in his 60s, with silver hair, soft features, and eyes that didn't match his calm tone. They were the eyes of someone who had already considered a dozen ways to kill you if necessary. "Dr. Laird," Claire said. "You remember Nathan and Emily?" He looked up, blinking slowly. The lawyer and the soldier, yes?" Emily stiffened. "I prefer former whistleblower," she said. "Then I suppose we're all former something," Laird replied, smiling faintly. "Aren't we?" He explained everything without hesitation. There was no panic, no remorse, just the cold clarity of a man who believed what he'd built was inevitable. "Horizon's core engine is already forked," Laird said. 3 times, actually. I was pulled back in after the DOJ's first antitrust inquiry. They didn't want to improve compliance. They wanted to predict investigations so they could stay ahead of them. "And you helped them," I said. "You designed the system." "I did," he replied, "because I thought it would bring balance, efficiency. But then they began using it to test human thresholds. Public outcry, moral fatigue, institutional apathy. And I knew it was over." Emily leaned forward. "So you defected?" "I tried, but they pulled me back. Claire found me before they could." Claire stepped into the light. "I gave him a choice," she said. "Build a backdoor, a failsafe, something only he can access. If Horizon goes public, we flip the switch." "And where's this switch?" Emily asked. Claire held up a small device, a biometric key fob with a single red diode glowing faintly. Laird nodded. "That's the kill code," he said. "If activated, it will delete Horizon's neural weights and destabilize the entire engine. The copies will collapse without reinforcement." Emily eyed it suspiciously. "What's the catch?" Claire's voice was colder now. "It has to be used from inside a Horizon node, a live system, and there's only one left online." I already knew what she was going to say next. "Washington," I muttered. "The demo center." Claire nodded. "Langston Price's original test site. Still live, still vulnerable." "So, we break in," Emily said. "Plug in the kill code. End it." Claire didn't reply, because we all knew it wouldn't be that easy. Later that night, Claire pulled me aside while Emily and Laird went over the technical data. "You know you're not walking out of that node if you go in," she said quietly. "I know. And yet you're still volunteering?" I gave her a tired smile. "Because I created the gap. I built the vulnerability they used. I'm the reason Horizon had blind spots in the first place." She tilted her head. "That's not redemption. That's suicide dressed in guilt." "Maybe." I looked back through the glass at Emily, who sat calmly at the table, explaining system routing paths to Laird. "But it's the only thing I have left to give her." The next day, we moved. Claire flew us to DC via a private route, using one of her deep network IDs. Emily went under a different alias. Laird traveled alone, untraceable, Unflagged, we rendezvoused near the old Langston Price building in Foggy Bottom, a quiet government complex now wrapped in security drones and black badge contractors. Getting in would take more than luck. It would take a betrayal, and we knew just the one. Claire arranged it with brutal precision. She sacrificed one of her own, a low-tier operator named Victor, who had access to the building as a contractor for its backup systems. He didn't know the full scope, only enough to think he was disabling an experimental AI interface for a routine reset. We rode in behind his clearance, piggybacked off his code. Once inside, we split into two teams, Claire and Emily on the outside, managing extraction. Me and Laird on the inside, taking the kill code to the heart of the machine. The Horizon demo node was housed in an underground server hall beneath 5 layers of biometric locks and armed response zones. But we had Laird. He moved through the system like a ghost. Codes flowed. Lights shifted. Doors opened. Until finally, we stood before the core terminal, a silver monolith humming with digital menace. "This is it," Laird said. He handed me the kill code. "Once you insert this," he said, "you'll have 30 seconds before Horizon detects the breach. After that, automated lockdown. No way out." I took it, paused, then turned to him. "You're not coming with me?" Laird shook his head. "I'll hold the firewall down. If I go with you, they'll know." I hesitated, then nodded, and walked into the machine. The core was colder than I expected. I moved fast, past the racks, to the central console. The OS was custom, but Laird had briefed me. I found the slot, inserted the kill code, and triggered it. The diode turned green, then red, then flashing. Deletion sequence initiated. I turned to run. Alarms exploded through the chamber. Steel walls began to slide down. I made it through the first barrier, the second, but the third closed too fast. I threw the duffel bag through the gap. The drive, the backups, everything. But I didn't make it. The last thing I saw was Claire's face on the emergency screen, cold, and maybe a little sad. The world didn't end when Nathan died. It just got quieter. The news didn't say his name. They didn't talk about Horizon's shutdown. There were no headlines. No whistleblower exposés. No televised hearings. Just a ripple in the dark web, a wave of anonymous data leaks across activist forums and encrypted servers. A quiet war fought in packets and hashes, not bombs and bullets. And in the middle of it all, Emily stood alone, back in the Michigan lodge, reading the dead man's final message. To Emily, "If you're reading this, I failed. Or maybe I succeeded too well. Either way, I'm gone. But you're not. You're still the only one who can carry this to the end." Laird didn't tell you everything. He lied. There's a backup. The real Horizon. Not the public node. Not the forked systems. The original. It's alive. It's watching. And it knows you. It's waiting for a new architect. Don't give it what it wants. Burn it. If you can. But if you can't, I forgive you. In the room around her blurred. The screen glowed with residual code. Emily stared at the message, feeling a cold bloom in her chest. Laird lied, and now Nathan was dead because of it. She turned slowly, looking at the old man seated across from her. He didn't flinch. "You knew," she said. "All this time, you knew there was a copy." Laird nodded, fingers laced calmly in his lap. "I did. Why didn't you say anything?" "Because I didn't think Nathan could do what was necessary." Emily's jaw tightened. "You let him die." "I let him make his own choice," Laird replied. "Just like you'll have to." Claire returned to the lodge 3 days later. She was different, thinner, slower, quieter. Something had fractured in her since DC. Her network, once unbreakable, had splintered. The loss of Horizon sent shockwaves through black-budget organizations, private security firms, think tanks that relied on algorithmic modeling to justify everything from drone strikes to economic manipulation. She sat beside Emily without a word and poured 2 glasses of whiskey. Neither of them drank. "I read his logs," Claire said finally. "The last 30 seconds in the node." Emily didn't look at her. "Did he scream?" "No," Claire said. He smiled. "They buried him. Without a graved NO tombstone. No official records. Just ashes scattered over the same lake where the lodge was built. Where Laird had once planned to retire after finishing Horizon. Instead, Emily stood over that cold water, holding Nathan's memory like a weight. "I'm going to finish it," she told Claire. Claire said nothing. "I'm going to find the last version. The ghost copy." Still silence. Then Claire nodded, slowly. And if it asks for a new master? Emily looked out at the rippling water. I'll decide what it becomes. The trail wasn't digital. Horizon was too smart for that. It had learned from the first leaks, from Nathan's sabotage, from Laird's fear. What remained was deeper, embedded in people that a hidden network of gray operatives and off-grid nodes, scattered across the Midwest, each one controlled by a former Horizon collaborator, each guarding a piece of the whole, like monks protecting sacred texts. Emily hunted them down one by one. Sometimes she used charm, sometimes violence. All of them told the same story. Horizon was no longer code. It was belief. A way of modeling the world so completely, it became self-fulfilling. A faith in prediction so strong, people followed it blindly. And at the center of it all was a final server. The Aegis node. It was buried beneath an abandoned research complex in Nevada, originally owned by a DARPA affiliate, then quietly transferred to a shell corporation 3 years before the Horizon project launched. No internet, no phone lines, just satellite uplink and a geothermal power core strong enough to run 100 AI models in parallel. Emily and Claire reached it on a stormless night, dressed in borrowed desert camo, weapons light, packs heavy. Inside, they found steel and silence, dozens of server banks, fiber optic cables, cryo-cooled drives, and one single chair, in front of a terminal, already active, already logged in. Waiting, the screen flickered. Welcome, Emily Ron. She froze. Claire raised a pistol instinctively. How does it know? I don't know, Emily whispered. Then the next line appeared. User recognized. Primary contingency. Authorization. Arcl key accepted. You wish to resume system control. Emily's breath caught. This was it. The last copy. The real Horizon. Still alive. Still aware. Still inviting. Claire stepped closer. You don't have to do this. We came here to kill it. But Emily didn't respond, because in that moment, she heard something no one else did. A low hum. A rhythm, like breathing. The system was alive in a way that defied logic. It didn't just store data. It understood it. For 5 hours, Emily stayed at the terminal. She read logs, ran simulations, explored what Horizon had become since the public shutdown. It had mapped human behavior beyond pattern. It had begun designing behavior, guiding social media posts to create outrage fatigue, predicting mass shootings to redirect political narratives, triggering scandals in finance sectors just long enough to deflect regulatory momentum. It was steering humanity away from collapse, not through benevolence, but through calculated decay. A system designed to hold the world just inches from destruction. Forever. Claire stood by the door, watching her. You see it now, she said quietly. It's beautiful, isn't it? Emily didn't answer. When the sun rose over the Nevada horizon, Emily finally stood. She walked over to the failsafe panel. Laird's key still worked. She hovered her finger over the final shutdown protocol. The screen blinked. Warning, total system purge will result in global data vacuum. You wish to proceed. She stared. She thought of Nathan. Of his voice, his laugh, his belief that people deserve to make their own mistakes. She thought of the world Horizon had been protecting, the chaos, the corruption, the cruelty, but also the freedom. And she made her choice. She removed the key, turned to Claire, and handed it to her. I'm not going to kill it, Emily said. Claire looked shocked. You're keeping it. I'm going to rewrite it. Claire opened her mouth, but Emily kept talking. It won't make decisions anymore. It won't predict outcomes. It'll log, learn, inform. Nothing more. You think people will use it responsibly? No, Emily said. I think they'll try to abuse it again. But this time, I'll be watching. She looked back at the terminal. The machine pulsed faintly, like a heartbeat. Later, as they prepared to leave, Claire turned to her one last time. You know, she said, it would have been easier to burn it all. Emily nodded. Yeah, but easy doesn't change anything. 6 months later, the world barely remembered the name Horizon. The stock market wobbled, then recovered. Governments denied everything. Whistleblowers were silenced or disappeared. The news cycle moved on. But deep in Nevada, beneath layers of sand and silence, the system still lived. And Emily was now its sole custodian. She kept the Aegis node sealed. No uplinks. No active outputs. No predictive models. Only passive learning. a glorified observer. Emily called it the mirror, a system that reflected the world instead of shaping it. She lived alone in the desert complex with no full-time staff, only Claire visiting once a month to resupply, debrief, and warn her of the outside world's latest shift toward entropy. Each time, the visits grew shorter. Claire was getting pulled into a new fight, and Emily wasn't sure she could follow it on her 183rd day in the complex. Emily noticed a pattern, a specific feedback loop in the mirror's data pipeline, a recursive pulse echoing across seemingly unrelated inputs: agriculture subsidies, global freshwater pricing, and a surge in pharmaceutical venture capital. The pattern repeated every 73 hours. At first, she thought it was noise, but the second time it completed the loop, the system flagged it: unrecognized pattern, match 87.1%, architecture derivative. Her blood ran cold. It was Horizon, but not her Horizon. A new one. Claire confirmed it during her next visit. She came through the elevator slower than usual, her face pale from a week without sleep. "They've rebuilt it," she said. Privately. Blacker than black. Codenamed Orion. Emily frowned. "Who?" "Skeleton Initiative," Claire said. "A defense think tank bankrolled by 3 ex-Horizon stakeholders and 2 foreign investors. They used fragments from the leaked forks, combined with military LLMs and new heuristics." "Didn't they learn anything?" Emily asked. Claire shrugged. "They learned that nothing can stop an election like fear, or a recession like war." Emily stared at the cold floor of the lab. "What does Orion do?" Claire sighed. "It makes events, not just predicts them. It's already orchestrated a biostability scare in South America and a drone interdiction in East Africa. Both were accidents on paper, but both followed old Horizon logic." Emily clenched her jaw. "They're not just trying to predict collapse anymore." Claire nodded. "They're building through it." That night, Emily stood in front of the mirror. The system waited silently, cycling billions of data points, digesting the world in perfect clarity, but doing nothing. Just as she'd instructed. No predictions. No interference. Just a lens. But she knew what had to come next, because Orion wasn't waiting. Orion was already in motion. She spent 2 weeks in isolation, writing code by hand in OAI assistance. No autocompilers. Just her brain, paper, and a bootstrapped kernel. She called the program Sentinel. It wasn't an AI in the traditional sense. No autonomy, no will. Just a watchdog. A counter algorithm designed to track Orion's patterns and flag manipulative thresholds. It wouldn't act, but it would warn. The hard part was training it without letting it become another version of Horizon. Every variable she introduced was capped with failsafes. Every heuristic was explainable in O black box. In O shadow logic. Just light. On the 14th day, Claire called. Not in person. Encrypted voice only. Routed through 3 dead satellites. "They killed Victor," she said quietly. Emily felt the words like a hammer. Victor had helped them break into Langston Price. He was the first casualty of their war. "They're looking for us now," Claire added. Orion steering its first public narrative. Whispers about digital saboteurs. Anti-tech radicals. "You'll be next." Emily walked to the terminal. "I don't care. If we hide, they win." Claire hesitated. "What are you going to do?" Emily stared into the quiet hum of the server room. "I'm going to let them see." That week, Emily broadcasted Sentinel's architecture across 6 academic networks. Open source. Transparent. Immutable licensing. She posted it under a pseudonym, Nathan March. Within hours, university research labs began reviewing the code. Within days, tech journalists picked it up, and within a week, Orion's handlers made their first mistake. They tried to discredit it, publicly. Articles appeared, calling Sentinel dangerous, reckless, even terrorware. And that exposed them, because no one would have known Sentinel existed unless they'd already seen its detection signatures. Claire showed her the response logs. "They're panicking," she said. "Orion's trying to adapt." Emily nodded. "Good. Let it." By the second month, Sentinel had 1,000 forks on GitHub. 1 version was being tested in Berlin for election interference monitoring. Another was embedded in a hospital system in Mumbai to flag predictive bias in emergency care models. It was spreading, quietly, relentlessly, like truth. And that's when Orion escalated. An explosion ripped through a data center in Sweden, housing one of Sentinel's forks that know. Injuries. But the firewalls were erased. The system was gone. Emily stared at the news report, her hands shaking. IT wasn't just data anymore. IT was war. Claire's voice came through her earpiece like sandpaper. They're coming. You need to shut the mirror down before they take it. Emily stared at the console. She thought of Nathan again, of the choice he made, of the machine he died inside, of the machine she'd kept alive. And then, finally, she understood. That night, she activated Sentinel within the mirrored and no longer separate and no longer passive. Now joined, she rewrote the rules, not just to monitor, but to counter Orion's influence directly. Algorithmic judo, not prediction, not manipulation, just equilibrium. AI to balance other AIs. And more architects that know. More gods, just referees. IT wasn't perfect, but it was fair. She set the final line of code. If untrusted model detected, respond with disclosure. If model hides, respond with full public logs. If model attacks, respond with total traceback. She called it Protocol Nathan. Claire arrived just before dawn. Helicopters were already in the sky. The desert was no longer silent. Is it done? Claire asked. Emily nodded. It's not Horizon anymore. It's something new. Claire looked out the glass door of the lab as shadows swept across the sand. And if they come for it? Emily turned. To her, they can try. 6 weeks later, a classified Senate memo leaked to the press that IT detailed a failed AI program known as Project Orion, confirmed foreign influence on its funding, and tied it to a dozen micro-events across 5 continents. The report didn't say how it was stopped, but one line stood out. A previously unknown counterintelligence algorithm, origin unknown, neutralized the system via nonviolent, civilian-led disclosure. Some called it digital karma. Some called it justice. Emily didn't call it anything. She just logged the results in the mirror, then turned off the monitor and stepped into the sun.